All right. Hello, Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine. I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for Historic Athens. We are so glad that you're tuning in today for our 1 o'clock broadcast of This Moment in History, COVID-19 in Athens, Georgia. For those of you that have tuned in to the previous other 20 episodes, or any of those 20 episodes, this program is designed to document and explore this unique historic moment in Athens history. A little later in the broadcast, I will introduce you to Historic Athens and offer you the opportunity to get plugged in if you're someone who loves Athens, Georgia, and if you love Athens history. But I want to, as quickly as possible, get our guest on the line. Today's guest is Ashley Shull. She works at Athens Clarke County Library in the Heritage Room. We're really looking forward to getting to know her and her work in our community. Before I begin, though, I just want to let you know, if you are tuned in to this, and if we are still live, this is not just a program you can watch. This is also a program that you can participate in. By commenting below this video, you can share questions, thoughts, encouragement, whatever you'd like to share with our guest today. And we will be able to actually bring that up on screen, share it with our guest, and make it part of our programming today. That's important because at the completion of this series, after we've completed all 55 interviews, we plan on compiling this digital archive and contributing it or offering it to local research institutions and libraries. And so by submitting a question or comment, you're not only helping us with today's program, but you're also becoming part of that historic record that future generations can go back and see. So if you have, once again, as we're flowing here, if you have any questions, comments, just drop them below. All right. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and hit a few switches here, and we're going to go ahead and bring Ashley onto the program. So let me just do that. Bear with me 1 second. All right. I see we have Ashley on the line. Ashley, let me just make one last switch and then we'll get started here. And I also have you audio in too. All right, great. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. Hi, how are you?
Thank you. Good, doing well.
Good. So, to a lot of the people tuning in today, some of them may be familiar with your work. I know that you're someone who is out in the community, oftentimes trying to locate important resources and materials for the Heritage Room. But there may be people tuning in that don't even know what the Heritage Room is or haven't met you yet. So could you take a moment and introduce yourself and your work in this community?
Definitely. My name's Ashley Shull. I've worked for the Athens Clarke County Library for, it'll be 8 years in October.
Wow.
So a long time. And I came here after leaving a career in teaching. Used to teach high school English and started my MLAS program through Valdosta State's program. It's the only program in the States online. So I had the option of where I wanted to live. So I came to Athens and ended up getting a job at the library part-time and have just gradually worked my way up through the ranks after I finished my degree program. But now I currently serve as the Archives and Special Collections Coordinator, which means that I manage the Heritage Room in the library, but then I also serve a regional role. I serve on our leadership team for our 5-county region and assist our other counties with their cultural heritage collections that they have at their institutions as well. So it includes Clarke County, Oconee County, Franklin County, Madison County, and Oglethorpe counties. So it's a large coverage area. But most of my day-to-day is in our Heritage Room in the Athens Clarke County Library. If you're not familiar with us, we're on the 2nd floor, just in front of the computer labs in our own special research room. So we have a research room there. People sign in when they come in, and they're able to use the materials in our room. And, that room was established in 1992 when that building opened and moved to moved from Doherty Street, if anybody remembers where the old library was. And slowly over the years, even prior to moving from Doherty Street, the librarians there collected materials. They had a point that it justified opening up a room. And then with the renovation in 2012 that we had, we added a temperature controlled vault area, actually two of them. So we were able to fully process our archival collections that were already in existence and then make those searchable and findable online. So that's a little bit about the Heritage Room. You know, we have a collection of over 7,500 bound volumes of books, anywhere ranging from, you know, general Southern history to genealogical items. Each county in the state of Georgia is kind of broken out, so it's really easy to find stuff in that room. And then the most special collections are those rare ones for me. So we have the entire Athens Banner Herald on microfilm. And if you notice, you can only go back to about like 2013 or 14 online. And then Georgia Historic Newspapers has everything from like its inception to 1924 online. There's a big gap between 24 and 2014. And so the only way that it's accessible right now is on microfilm, and we hold that full microfilm collection in the room and have digital microfilm readers so people can, you know, use that. We also have superior and inferior court records for the Clark County. So they're a lot easier to access than actually visiting the courthouse oftentimes. And then we have our, you know, local archival collection that's pretty unique. Some of those items are on Digital Library of Georgia, but many of them are in our storage vault, you know, and are searchable through our archive space. So that's the gist of the Heritage Room. There's a lot more.
That's a lot to summarize.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people in Athens, I've had the privilege of having a long relationship with the Athens Library. You mentioned the Dougherty building. My first library card was from that one. So it was like a metal stamped one that I still have somewhere. And I remember when the Athens Library opened up on Baxter, it just seemed impossibly large and so many resources. And one of the things that's so wonderful about that building is it grows with you. So, you know, you go from the children's room to this larger universe. And so it was in high school was the first time I was ever anywhere near the Heritage Room. And, you know, it's interesting. You said you've been there for about 8 years. You also mentioned in 2012, there was the installation of this kind of a rehabilitation of the room. Were you at the forefront of that? Was that what you were brought in to do?
So it was already done by the time I joined staff, and I joined staff as just a computer assistant. So I was helping people or access computers. So I was not part of that process. That would have been our previous librarians that were there. Laura Carter, I'm sure plenty of folks have
of course.
Yep. And Angela Stanley got hired in that position, and she now works for GPLS, so Georgia Public Library Services, as the home place director. So she's a between public libraries and other institutions and about cultural heritage, you know, collections. So she works on the state level now.
Well,
so they were really integral in setting that up.
Well, so yeah, Laura, you know, Laura, at least we know very well from her, her work with all things historic.
And what's great about her is I was trained by Laura. So, you know, and still have her as a resource too. And, you know, she helps out a good bit. So, it's always good to go to.
You know, Ashley, what's interesting here is, and here, I'll share this. Once again, if you have any comments or questions, you can share them below. As long as we're live. Jeremy Field just jumped in to say, I remember having books read to me at Dougherty Street, and we banged soccer balls off the side of the back building, Clark Central soccer practice. Anything to get you to engage with the library here. Ashley, you know, the reason why I was sharing my personal history is that I think that one of the things that's so phenomenal about our local library, and now libraries, now that we have different locations, is that the community can grow with it. But I've also noticed that the library has grown too, and how it interacts with the community. And I think there's probably other heritage rooms of your type around the country that would not be working as hard to reach out into the community and ensure that we're recording an equitable history. The first time I saw you, I was going to say the first time I saw you speak was several years ago at First AME Church, and if I remember correctly, you were actually was that not you?
No, that was
okay.
But that's the thing about the library. Though. It doesn't matter which one of us is out there doing the work. We're all doing it, and that's the biggest part of, what the library does is that outreach work and going out within the community, to tell them this is what we do, this is what we can offer, what do you need is really that bigger question for me, is what need can we fill for you? And for us in the heritage kind of side of it, it's really, and this is a question that archives get all the time, is we're not here to take stuff, what can we offer to you to make sure that your history
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. The reason why I was mentioning that was just that I know that the Heritage Room has this unique job, it seems, of having these resources for the community, but different parts of our community have had different access to recording their own histories, preserving those histories. I was going to ask, how do you approach that job in a community as diverse in background and economic status as Athens is? How do you go about that?
It's the toughest part of the job for sure, is that equitable piece. If you go back into, and this is true of any history book that you get in high school, it's generally whitewashed. That's just kind of the trends.
Sure.
And archives were the same for a long period of time, is that the only folks who were donating to archives were those who were capable and knew that they existed. And generally those were, upper to middle class white families. So now, there you see the emergence of community archive projects like that we're currently doing with COVID-19, where anybody can submit their information who wants to. All it is a simple Google form and an upload. You could do it from a mobile phone. So, making access more equitable is where we kind of hope to bridge that gap as well. Making our presence known within the community, that we are resource for you, that you can come in to use, is a large piece of that. We also are involved in a web collection. So we are partners in a grant called Community Webs that's hosted by the Internet Archive. So we go and crawl local community websites and create metadata and put them within collections on Archive It. So to provide access, and also because of so much of the information that's being created now is online, we have to change the way that we are collecting that information. So, grabbing websites that, and information that necessarily wouldn't be saved is a large piece of what we do now too. So doing those community archive projects, and like the Common Heritage grant that was done that got finished just as I joined as part of the Archives and Special Collections team. So I kind of finished out it was a processing bit, not the fun part. It was the boring part in front of a computer. But, those community projects, and then our web collection is a collection that I've been really excited to be doing for the last couple of years. So.
Ashley, the first time I heard you describe the online portion of it, the internet archiving, it was really fascinating to me, because I do think so many people assume that if it's online, it's forever, that there's this online permanence. But you did a really good job of helping those of us that were in the room that day understand that that's not really true, especially with local resources. Can you spend a little bit more time talking about that internet archiving project and why it's so important?
Yeah. So, and I think the best way to kind of relate it to people is to provide a personal metaphor. So Tom and I talked about this too. We both had MySpace pages back in the day. And I am so happy that thing does not exist anymore
Agreed.
at
Yes.
all.
Yes.
So, or even folks who have like live journals and things like that. Or you could even talk about, there was a huge emergence of blogging, in the
Mm-hmm.
late 90s to early 2000s. And a lot of folks who just fell off using it, and they stopped paying for their domain registrations or server fees to keep the websites hosted. I don't think folks realize, but Five Star Day, it's a restaurant
Mm-hmm.
in downtown Athens, right across the
Yeah.
street from the Arches. Everybody loved that place. It was really kind of like an Athens institution, just for its atmosphere and everything like that. That website still exists, which I find
Wow.
surprising. They explain the closure and everything, but we went ahead and grabbed that website. So, you have to think about those things, especially with those hyper local places.
Mm-hmm.
Archive does that work, does send out web crawlers just generally and captures information that's on the internet. But you have to think about the massive amounts of that. There's too much to kind of capture. So,
Mm-hmm.
they started this grant project with public libraries through different communities, small, large. Los Angeles is part of it, Denver. To target really local community websites that we can go and capture. And outside of just the capturing part is adding that metadata piece, placing it
Mm-hmm.
in collection so that it's searchable and it's findable within the Wayback Machine. So, we have like a food culture
Mm-hmm.
collection, went through and collected a bunch of websites from locally owned restaurants
Mm-hmm.
with from owners. We contacted folks, and that way, if you went to that restaurant after a home game at UGA and you're curious, I wonder what was that place called again? There's a way to kind of find that information. I've gotten questions throughout the years. There was somebody who's writing a book that was set in the 80s in Athens, and she couldn't remember the name of this bar that she wanted to feature in this book. We found it through city directories,
Mm.
but nobody uses a phone book anymore, nor
Right.
number in a phone book anymore. So having that online collection that we could go to, to find that information now is really great. And we're grabbing nonprofit websites. And right now, that's the bulk of the work that we're doing, from home, is
Yeah.
going through, and all of the websites that have popped up as a result of COVID-19. We are collecting a lot of those. We'll go back and get permission later. We're kind of collecting, keeping it private, and
Mm-hmm.
then once we're kind of able to go through and ask permission and target page owners, we'll email folks and reach out and just say, hey, do you mind this being in a collection online? It's publicly accessible information. So generally we don't get no's. I think we've only ever, out of the like over 300 websites that we've collected in the last year and a half or so, I think we've gotten 2 no's. And those are from like neighborhood associations, which I understand
Mm.
that. So, but it's the internet and the web is really how we exchange information now, especially now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so having a tool to capture that's tremendously helpful, even within our normal physical collections. Connolly Hester, her
Yeah.
Al Hester passed away, and Al wrote amazing books, throughout the years about Athens and about local history. Well, he also maintained a blog, and there was a lot of stuff that didn't make it into books, but that was really extremely informative, especially about the residents who are in Gospel Pilgrim Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to go through and crawl and capture that web page as it existed before Connolly decided to stop, paying those server fees. So,
Wow.
that's where you have to think of how people are creating information, so we have to start saving it the way that people are creating it, so that, it's
Do you have any? Yeah. Do you have any favorite historic gems in the collection? I mean, anything that you get
I have a
excited
couple.
about that's within arm's reach?
Yeah, and these are physical collections.
Yeah.
So part of one is online and the other one is fully online now. One of them is J.B. Carlton's African American Patients Medical Ledger. It was
Hmm.
done from like 18, I want to say 8, don't, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it's post-Reconstruction years, so about 1867 or so until about 1871 of African American patients that he saw. He was a white doctor. He's buried over in Coney Hill. Of African American patients that he saw and the prices that they paid for certain medicines. And that's online at a Digital Library of Georgia. And we were able to get that online with a grant from GPLS, from Georgia Home Place. And then one of the other collections that I really like that are mayor's court dockets. So we have 97 bound volumes of all of the local arrests, dispensations of those cases from 1902 to 1971.
Wow.
Yeah. And the first 8 of those volumes, which probably gets us only to about 1904, 3 or 4, is on Digital Library of Georgia, and we were able to do that through a sub-grant from Digital Library of Georgia, from DLG. That grant was about $7,500, so, and we could only get 8 of the 97 done up. But those are really, it's hard to talk about arrests and criminal cases as being a fantastic thing.
Right.
Because it's not, those aren't records that oftentimes get saved, but they document a portion of the population who would normally not be documented.
Right.
So you get place of arrest, the name of the arrestee, the date of the arrest, the charge they were arrested for, and then the dispensation of the case, meaning how much was their fine, and whether or not they worked off that fine in the streets.
Wow.
Yeah. So it goes, and you can see a 70-year history of law enforcement through our community.
Ashley, so I know that you mentioned, by the way, if you're just tuning in, we're with Ashley Shull from the Athens Clark County Library Heritage Room. I also want to make sure that we mention how thankful we are to First American Bank and Trust for being the sponsor for this week's episodes. Ashley, I know you mentioned that you're working from home these days. That's not
Yeah.
always the case.
No.
So let's transition some into COVID-19 and how it's affecting your work. One of the main questions we've been kicking these conversations off with has been how COVID-19 crept into your life. So, at some point it was on the periphery, then it was
Yeah.
very much in your face, and then it started to affect your work. Can you
Mhm.
walk us through that process?
So for me personally, I could kind of see it on the horizon. I'm one of those people who my first job ever at a fantastic boss. He was a school administrator for 35 years, and his name is Joe Searle. He ran his honors program for about 25 years. But he always said, fail to plan, plan to fail. And I generally over anticipate a lot of things and plan too much. But generally I'm always prepared. So I could kind of see it on the horizon. So about a week before the library closed, I was already like, okay, this is coming. I'm not sure how it's going to impact us. I wonder what this will look like for the library. And so by Friday, when we were meeting and trying to make that Friday, I think it was the 14th of March, when we were trying to make that decision about what we were going to do. Are we going to close? If we close, what is it going to look like? And then the call was made that Saturday. We were going to go ahead and like that Friday, we made the decision, okay, we'll go ahead, give us the weekend, we'll close by Monday. And then the decision was made, no, on Saturday, we're not coming into work on Sunday.
Wow.
I think that was at the point where Kelly, Mayor Gertz went ahead and put in the shelter in place order for Athens. So,
Sure.
and and we're having to make decisions not just for our branches in Clark County, but for our branches in our outlying communities as well. So, yeah, that was an interesting week.
And yeah, I can imagine so. And I know that we were in the process of trying to decide how to move forward because specifically because we operate the Athens Welcome Center, and visiting guests from all over the world, we had to make some decisions pretty quickly. But even as quickly as we moved, the library moved faster. I remember as we were preparing to make the final decision, one of the things that gave us confidence that we were making the right call
Yeah,
was that the library had already made that decision.
yeah.
Uh, do you get a sense that the library moved quickly just because it serves so many different portions of our community?
I think that's the thing. And, we are a community space. That's what we pride ourselves on. It's not just our collections. It's not just the books. It's not, we are a community space where people come and gather. So that's where it kind of raised a lot of anxiety, I think, for a lot of us. And we're serving a variety of populations, oftentimes vulnerable populations. So, we really have to think about not just the safety of, us as employees, but more so the safety of the general public who comes to use our space. And can we accommodate them in a time period like this in the building we have? So,
Yeah, the biggest shame is if there was ever a time where we're all sitting around and want something to read, this would be
we've got ebooks. We
that's
have
right, it's true.
ebooks.
Ebooks, audiobooks, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Ashley, what has been the primary difference for you? Can you talk a little bit about your process of working from home now that you aren't in the Heritage Room itself?
Yeah. So I have a tiny apartment. So trying to find like a nice space where I can work. Like right now, I'm sitting in the middle of my living room. This is not where I work.
Yeah.
And so just trying to find a different space to work was really difficult. I've kind of sunk into a routine now that's been good. But really, more importantly for me, it's not seeing, my staff every day and the folks who come into our room. That's the hardest part for me, really, is not seeing our patrons, and not being able to interact with them on a daily or weekly basis. We have folks that come in, quite often to the room, and not being able to just say, hey, how you doing, and checking in with folks is a big deal. That's the part that's like, whew. And it makes me, and the more I think about it, the more kind of upset I get. So I try not to think about that and just try to focus on, how can we serve folks now from the situation that we're in now. Offering online programming and online tutorials. We have a blog at the Heritage Room that we regularly share on our Facebook page about, and we do posts. We did a post about our Olympics, our 96 Olympics collection.
Yeah.
Different posts, just a variety of different things like that, just to kind of at least provide some levity and entertainment if you're interested in history. And then really highlighting those databases and resources that you can get from home right now. Ancestry Library Edition, who would have thunk you could get that at home for free? So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been Historic Athens has definitely been trying to share a lot of these posts from the Facebook page. I know we shared the Olympics one. There were a few others that have been really exciting. If you are someone who follows the Historic Athens Facebook page already, you can scroll down and find it. If not, Ashley, where can they find you online? Where should they find that blog? And then what's your Facebook page?
So if you just search for Athens Clark County Library Heritage Room, just like the children's page, it's Athens Clark County Library Children's page. Ours is Athens Clark County Library Heritage Room. Comes right up. And then our blog is linked within the Facebook page there.
Mhm.
And I'm doing like tutorial videos every Tuesday. So those go up at 2 p.m. on a different databases, just how to use them, um, and how to navigate those different tools. Oftentimes that's what we find to be most difficult for folks. It's not just the research, it's also, how do I figure out how to do a search on this web page?
Mhm.
Um, and in the summer, and we've got a programming catalog, a programming schedule that will go up for June and July too, where we'll be doing more online kind of interactive classes using Google
Mhm.
Meets.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
exciting. I went ahead and shared the link to the Heritage Room's Facebook page in the comment
thank you.
section below. So you can just click right on that if you want to go visit it. Also, one of our supporters just chimed in to say RB Digital is a great service. That's the service you can
Yeah,
use to get audiobooks through your local library. So thank you, Karen, for sharing that with us.
yeah.
Um,
It is the
so-
best way. That's how I get my reading content and list. I listen to a lot of like autobiographies. That's my thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and RB Digital has some great content on there, and we're purchasing more and more titles every day using our for our online resources. So
Yes, I can relate. I'm a super strange person. I like to run while listening to biographies.
yeah,
That's my
nice.
so all right. So Ashley, I want to dig more into this because one of the projects that Historic Athens and the Heritage Room and so many other local historic organizations
Mhm.
were meeting to start planning was this idea of an event calendar. And
Yeah,
during that period of time, you explained that you already you maintain an event calendar. It
yeah,
seems to me like you're going to have a lot more events to track.
yeah.
Um, you
We
know,
yeah, and so that was the thing. And really, how can we right now?
right,
Um,
right.
uh, there are a few events like the Georgia Archives down in Morrow. I think they're starting to move to some online events. I think there is, especially during like what month is it now? During
Yeah,
March, there was a lot
right.
like, okay, we've got to get people stationed at home. How are we going to do this? What is it going to look like? And then
Right.
April was really figuring everything out. And so I think, this month and next month, we'll start to see more and more institutions go up.
Mhm.
Northeast Georgia History Center, they're doing a good
Mhm.
job with their online content and their Facebook Live stuff. Really interactive stuff for kids where you can they do Ask a Historian Day.
Oh,
I've
cool.
Yeah, and I found those to be really interesting, and we generally highlight their events. Atlanta History Center, I believe, is doing some online events as well. Sometimes they charge for stuff, not sure if they're doing that now. Um, and a lot of our local organizations, I haven't seen too much, outside of, you guys doing these interviews, and things like that. But I think we're going to start seeing it more. So, yeah, if people want to subscribe to our newsletter, they can just, message us through our Facebook page. It'll probably be the best way, and just say, hey, can you subscribe me to the newsletter, and send me an email address, and I can get them on our
Mhm.
newsletter. We put one out for April that featured, what we are doing. But I'm hoping by June, our June newsletter, that we can start, putting outside events on it as well. So,
That's exciting.
yeah.
So let me just ask you this personally. So, for all the community leaders like yourself that we're speaking to, uh, there's a moment I want to capture, which is this is not the most professional way to say it, but maybe the oh crap
Okay.
moment. I mean
Yeah.
that moment where this became real. You
Mhm.
realized there were going to be closures, and
Mhm.
that this institution that you were leading, that was designed for a certain type of marketplace, suddenly
Yeah.
had to be recalibrated.
Yeah.
What was what was that like to realize that you had to rewire this whole thing?
I'm generally pretty good in crisis. I was raised by a mom who's a school counselor, and prior to
Mm,
that, worked for DFACS. And
mm,
dad was in the Air Force, and it was TDY quite often when we were kids. So I'm good with a little bit
mhm,
of chaos in life. And he passed back in December, so
mm,
life not really ever felt the same since then, and really that he had a long illness. So, for me, and I kind of talked about it before, I was like, okay, this is coming. And we started thinking of things that we could do from home.
Right.
And things like that without our collections too, because that's a big part of it is, we physically work with collections on a daily basis, whether that's providing them for folks or processing them so that they can be available for people. Every archive kind of runs under that. You have at least 30% of your collections are unprocessed. And so we'll have that to get back to when we get into the building. But that oh crap moment didn't really happen for me. I don't deal with those. I'm like, okay, what can I do?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, all right, well, we've got the web archive project. So it was immediately like, go, let's hit the gas pedal and figure this out.
So if somebody's watching this and they want to get more involved, you've explained how they can get on the newsletter by messaging you and including their email.
And I think
you've explained
the submitting to the web archive are not just the web collection, because I think people get confused. Yeah, we're collecting internet websites, but we're also asking that folks submit text files, audio files, video files, photos to a community archive. And that's really the biggest way that we can get involved, because it's having folks document their own experience in a way that they choose to, in a way that they want to. And it's an opt-in option, but I mean, it's as simple as like, I took a picture of how I sit on my couch and work, which is not real.
right.
I took a picture of like some really cheap gas prices, because I was like, holy crap, it's $1. Like, what in the world?
Right.
Those.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that the other day. That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's also with Kroger points.
That's right. That's right.
But I haven't seen gas hasn't been $1 since I've driven.
Right.
So since I started driving when I was 16, and that was a while ago. But those simple things, or sidewalk chalk art that people are doing throughout their communities. It could be as simple as that, even if you don't want to share anything hyper personal. But we have gotten, one of my favorite submissions that we have gotten is from a 96-year-old woman whose parents lived through the Spanish flu epidemic. She was born shortly thereafter. And she kind of did like a 3-page summary of her last 96 years of life and her interpretation of the time now. It brought me to tears. So seeing those things from people are going to be tremendously impactful 100 years from now. We shared right at the beginning, we started pulling articles from Georgia historic newspapers and posting them on our Facebook page of the different like ordinances that Athens Clarke County had. There's a poem that somebody had published in the Jackson Herald from 1918 about, the Spanish influenza. But outside of the newspaper collection, we don't really have any other personal accounts of what happened in 1918. So it's really, for us, it's like ensuring that we document this period of time, not just with a simple web crawl. We want that that personal touch, and oftentimes that really helps historians 100 years from now justify certain decisions. And it's a study in our culture, and why not be a part of that and make sure that it's documented in an accurate way too, in a complete way.
Ashley, how does I guess one question I'd naturally want to ask then is, so when I think about that 3-page letter from the 96-year-old woman that was submitted to you, or as you're going through these limited historic accounts, does that help shape your perspective of the moment we're in right now, understanding how we've dealt with things like this historically?
Yeah, it does. Generally what we're seeing right now is a lot of care and concern for others in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of posts, um, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety. So oftentimes for me, as I'm going through and reading these things and having to process it, I can only look at it for maybe an hour a day
Yeah.
and kind of step away from it just to kind of keep myself okay.
Yeah.
Doing that kind of, they call it trauma collecting. It's been done all over the world after natural disasters and things like that. Um, so having to keep yourself sane is a big part of it. But then
Yep.
for me, it's just amazing to see how people are coming together too. Um, and it makes me feel hopeful.
Yeah.
So there's a piece of hope there too. I mean, we got a video from one of the long-term care homes here in Athens of them just singing, like spread apart,
Oh, wow.
far apart from each other, singing and playing "You Are My Sunshine," and like I bawled.
Wow.
So having those, having those a part of like that's my daily life now is going through those different submissions. Um, it's hugely impactful, and I for me, like I just want to make sure that everybody has that experience if they want it to submit, the photos that they're taking or any videos or things that they're doing with their families. Um, and even the nitty-gritty stuff too, even your, deepest dark fears, and things like that. I think it's important to document those personal experiences as well.
Yeah.
Because without those, we don't have a complete picture.
Ashley, we have about 11 minutes left together. Bear with me one quick moment. We do like to acknowledge our sponsors, and so I'm just going to do that real quick, and then we'll try to flesh out that complete picture, at least for today's interview here. So just one moment. So first of all, while I'm bringing this up on screen, we want to say that we once again appreciate First American Bank and Trust for sponsoring this week's broadcast. On screen right now, you're going to see the list of our sponsors. These are our annual sponsors that support us throughout the year. We really, really appreciate them. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, a 52-year-old one, but our bills are still due every year and every month and every week. So we need every dollar that comes from these sponsors. Thank you to them. We're also fortunate that we have donor members in our community. If you'd like to become a donor member, you can do so for as little as $5 a month. And you can find out how to support us at historicathens.com. It supports free programming like the kind you're seeing today. And so we would love to see that support. I also just want to bring up on screen Ashley's interview, which we're thrilled to have today, is one of 55. And so we recently published, you can visit our Facebook page for this. This is the complete schedule that goes back to the first broadcast with Broderick Flanagan on April 13th. We are doing these all the way through June 26th. You want to know why the font's so small? It's hard to fit 55 of them on there. But the previous 20 episodes before Ashley's episode, they are available on our Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/historic Athens/videos, and you can go back and see the prior ones before Ashley's interview today. The rest of the week, we'll be interviewing Kent Kilpatrick, Michelle K. Pearson, Eve Anthony, and then Sterling Gardner. And so we invite you to come back and see that. And then last thing I'm going to bring up on screen as we gear into the last 10 minutes of our discussion with Ashley is our wonderful staff, the Athens Welcome Center, also known as the Church Waddle Brumby House. It's the oldest residence in Athens. They are doing a series of tours and workshops that will be accessible also through Facebook online. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Our interim director over there, Michelle Wynn, will be each day welcoming you live to an interactive tour of a different site, National Historic Register of Places site around Athens. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, staff member Caitlin Short will be doing virtual workshops and tours from the Church Waddle Brumby House itself. So if you'll just go to the Facebook page for the Athens Welcome Center at 2 o'clock, you'll be able to tune in on that. So we want to thank everyone who's been involved in helping us provide this programming. So Ashley, Thanks for allowing us to get through that spiel, but we
Yeah.
do appreciate everyone. Um, so, Ashley, as you know, as we mentioned before we went on air, there's a few questions we try to ask each guest. And so I'd like to kind of run through them with you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The first is everyone who lives in Athens. I'm sure that, when you chose to live here over everywhere else,
Yeah.
there are places that you've fallen in love with. Some of those places are still available curbside, but some of them are currently closed.
Yeah.
Uh, if tomorrow you woke up and somehow this was all over,
Yeah.
what would be your first stops? Where would you go?
This is gonna sound bad, but Flickr.
There's nothing wrong with Flickr. That's right.
Yeah, it's my favorite bar in town. Most of the bartenders that work there, especially Rich McCulka, just over the
Yes.
that I've been in town, have, it feels like walking into family immediately when you walk into
Right.
the space. So for me, it'd be Flickr for sure. And then for food, see, I've been doing to-go food at least once
Yes.
or twice a week,
Mhm.
just to kind of, support different restaurants. I myself used to work at Pulaski Heights Barbecue. I worked there part-time, the library part-time, while I was going to school part-time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, I've gone to go get food from Pulaski at least once, and so just I think one of my favorite places in town to go and to sit and to have a meal, honestly, is Agua Linda over on Prince.
Yes.
So going to get the taco plate and $2 tecates on Tuesdays. And Callie and Tito's is another place that I really, really enjoy just sitting on their patio there too. So and that's the thing, it's like prime patio weather finally.
Right. I know.
So
Well,
not being able to have that
Ashley,
is a big deal.
I'll say that you and I are at the center of several Venn diagrams, not only the historic ones and the MySpace ones,
Yeah.
but every place you mentioned. Yeah, especially I would love to do like an all bad movie night
Yeah.
hosted by Zapula
Yeah.
at Flickr, that would be
Flickr,
phenomenal.
yeah.
All
Well, and I
right.
think I would be remiss without mentioning Caledonia and, like, checking out a show there too.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite venues in town. It reminds me to go into, like, house shows back in South Georgia where I grew up. So, catching a show at Caledonia would be a lot of fun right now too.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
Caledonia and Calentino the same night sounds great. And actually, Chuck
yeah.
from Pulaski Heights is going to be a guest later on in this
Yes,
series.
that's
So
awesome. I'm glad. Yeah, Chuck's the
all right.
best.
So last two questions here. Part of what we do is historic preservation. We're going to be coming out of not only a pandemic when this is over, but also possibly likely a recession. Post-recession development sometimes can be very eager and it can endanger historic places. And so we've been asking each of our guests to list one or two of their favorite historic local places that they hope are preserved over time. Anything come to mind?
Morton Theater, of course. I think it's one of our gems, here in town. And then I'm trying to think of another place and for me, it's those gathering places that I really like are at risk. Those indoor gathering places that are, and Morton's one of those, as well as, and this has to do neither with COVID-19 or not, but Gospel Pilgrim Cemetery is a little place that's like really close to my heart. And there are several revitalization projects that were done, over 10 years ago. And, there's not perpetual care at that cemetery currently. So finding an option for that, I think would be a great and fantastic thing. It's one of those places that's gotten restored in the past and people go out there on MLK Day, but it's not continually maintained. So finding a way to make that happen, I think would be a big, 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 big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love Gospel Pilgrim and Fred.
Yeah.
Earlier, I almost made a Fred quote because he always talks about telling the whole story. So Fred, who helps with Gospel Pilgrim. I want to make sure I share a comment from one of our viewers, and then we'll ask Ashley the last question of the day. So Deborah Gonzalez, Deborah, thank you for tuning in. said so true about the documentation, especially by everyday people, not just leaders.
Yeah.
We need a full picture of what our community dealt with during these times. Ashley, you may have your own response to that. I'll just say that it's one of the reasons why the work that the Heritage Room is doing right now is distinct from what you're seeing right now. We love these live casts. We feel very fortunate to be able to document history in this way. But if we only have 55 episodes, we're likely to talk to people at a certain level in different communities. Whereas the work you're doing, Ashley, has the potential to record sidewalk art, personal accounts, everything at every level from every person. So maybe in case someone tuned in, since you described that, could you just share one more time how our viewers can share?
So, and I'll make sure that I post it in the comments once we're
That'd
done.
be great.
The link to the actual submission page. It's a really long and kind of nasty link. Works. But you know, all it is a Google form. So if you don't have Gmail, you can just email it to us. There's 2 different forms. So one for folks who use Gmail and then one for folks who do not. And if you have Gmail, it's a simple upload process where you just drop your files in there. If you don't have Gmail, it's just the permission form that you fill out, and then you just email us your submissions. You attach them as a document and email them. If you have trouble with it, email that email address. We'll call, we'll figure out a way to help you out with getting those things submitted. And it could be as simple as just a little audio note on your phone. It doesn't have to be anything extensive. We're not checking for grammar. Nobody else is going to look for grammar. We just really want to make sure that we are getting a complete and whole picture of experiences. And right now we're getting a lot of the cute and pretty, which is great. But making sure that we get everybody's experience. And I also understand that folks who are struggling right now don't have the time to submit, and that is perfectly fine. And if there's anything that we can do to help folks, to let us know, we're more than happy, to help folks out with everything. Hearing from healthcare workers, that's a realm that we haven't gotten yet. We see public Facebook posts happening, but it's not like I can just go and grab those. We wanted to make sure that we're doing our information collecting in an ethical way too. So, if you want to make sure that this is documented and perpetually saved, it's important to go ahead and submit.
Absolutely. Ashley, we have about a minute left here. The final question is this: 100 years from now, if somebody's going back and watching this, what would you like them to know about Athens in this moment in history?
I think that the biggest thing I would want them to know about Athens is that we are a community that is connected, and we are a community who takes care of each other. I see that on a daily basis, and a community who wants to make sure that all parts of our community are whole after this as well. So, absolutely. I hope.
We hope so too. So. Thanks to everyone who just tuned in. In just a moment, we'll share a link on the main Facebook page to the Athens Welcome Center programming that starts today at 2. We hope that you'll get more involved through the Facebook link we just posted with the Heritage Room. Ashley, thanks for all the work you do for our community. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much. Please be safe, be healthy out there. Ashley and I are going to go offline. Thank you, and please take care. Have a good day.